I think we're live. Cool. Super cool. So we are waiting on Neil. Oh, here he comes. I'm super psyched to kick this thing off today. We got a guest, Carrie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, shit, yeah. And then we got the mighty Neil. So we got a new background. Kevin Wiedemann over at Flywheel Systems made a background for us. So that's what we got. That's new and fancy today. And I was working on all the visual stuff, which to be honest is not my forte by a long shot. But doing the best
Looks
I can.
good.
So cool. So we got some kind of bigger news on the Helium side as far as Foundation just released this protocol report. But Carrie, I thought we'd start with you because that is kind of the more, I don't know, for me more exciting news is to see companies actually building on the network. So let's start with, for folks who don't know who you are or what you do, tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Carrie, and I started Baxus with my co-founder Todd about a year ago. And basically, the main goal was to just create a marketplace for secondary sales of whiskey and wine. And from that, we sort of got into this new, bigger life dream of creating infrastructure for all these tangible assets and recognizing that blockchain and then quickly after that, Helium was one of the best ways to do it. So we basically have a vault in New Jersey and a couple of other different locations, and we store all of the bottles there. And all of the collectors who come onto our platform are then able to log on, see their collections. We mint an NFT that represents ownership and authentication. And then through the Helium network, we're able to provide like external factors that are affecting their bottles. So, temperature, humidity. We're working on proof of presence so that people can see that the bottle's actually where we say it is, and we're not, lying to you. And then we're like making an NFT marketplace. But the whole goal is to make it very like user friendly. So, kind of like Web 2 front, Web 3 back end is the plan. But I met Joey like 2 months ago. I knew about Helium before that, but really got into it 2 months ago. So I'm very much a newbie in this space, and I've just been like just loving all things LoRaWAN and IoT. I think it's just absolutely brilliant.
Right on. And you're the CTO, the technology.
Yeah, I'm the CTO. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like you've got a pretty strong understanding of at least the technology behind it, or the ability to understand it. You got the
Well,
background to understand it.
what's funny is that our like and actually Daniel said this and it like struck like it was so true is that our stack is like hardware all the way to web with blockchain and data. Like we have the world's largest data set for historical whiskey sales as well. So it's like there's not one part of tech that we're not really touching. so it's a really fun like technical challenge and space to be in because you're really like touching all aspects of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah, full
rad.
stack.
Yep. Very like fuller stack, like the fullest of stacks.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it. Let's see. So we'll dive into that, but I want to make sure we say hi to all the folks who are coming on. Travis, good to see you. 619, Plain Simple Tech from Australia. I think there's an Australian thing that just went down on Joe's channel. He managed to just throw State of the Network on there, so we'll see if there'll be a competing or a battle of State of the Networks. But yeah, shit, we got this one, and then Jay, good to see you as well. Siegfried, Dustin, and then Brad Lee, and Grey Hat. Cool. So it looks like we got a decent little crew here today. All right, Carrie. So walk me through like what are the sensors you're using? Actually, no. Let's start with this. Like, what happened before you guys came along? How did people track their whiskey or wine? Was it just like you're trusting someone
Oh,
to?
did not. Like there's just no I mean like yeah, you can like if you have like a lot of people just keep it in their basement. And then obviously like, if you have like a Google Home sensor like humidity tracker or something in your basement, you can look at that. And there are some storage facilities that have, like some portals that allow you access, but there's no way to like take that underlying asset and then gain utility out of it. Like it's still just sitting there and there's no way to really view at every point in time how these things are actually doing and not on chain. And so and then the trading was all through gray markets, especially in the US. There's auction sites in the UK, but in the US, like there's no real, besides going through Sotheby's, there's no real good way of doing it. And so one of the issues we had in the beginning was just kind of choosing which path to go at because there's just so many issues. We were
Yeah.
like, okay, where should we start? Because this entire market is just in desperate need of any TLC, like just anything we can do.
It's rad. All right, before I jump in, like, because Love to hear myself talk. Neil or Daniel, like what are you guys thinking when you hear this? What do you? Yeah.
It makes so much sense. I mean, it's always been in my mind that you have, proof of location, proof of, these things existing in the real world, and that's what Helium enables. I think the Helium network can take it further as well, that we can have, SX1303s that mean that we don't even need a GPS chip in these things. We could just tell where they are in the wild, and that would be game changing. So it's great to hear people working on it.
SX1303, like that's the whatever the radio concentrator that allows what is it for
Yeah,
fine timing or something?
yeah.
Correct
The,
on my
the, the
technical language.
gateways Yeah, the gateways have GPS, which basically means that they pull a time sync, so you can know how long something took to arrive, and measure it. So
Yep.
you could know location without GPS involved.
Yeah, I know my
Yeah.
ignorance is stunning. It's just like, how do you not know this shit, Nick? You've been doing it for a year and a half, but I forget half
So
of it.
basic. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's like easy
I mean,
stuff
I
here.
do love this. I do love this idea of like anything alcohol related and IoT together. There's a lot of cool projects. Not just because I love alcohol. I mean, there's like smart breweries and a lot of sensors for that. And this
Mhm.
is like a use case that we haven't seen before with IoT, and I think that's it's a massive. And also, like you were talking before, you're not just doing like whiskey tracking. You're doing like a framework, right? That once proven working, prove that work, you can build for a lot of different asset classes. And everything using like Helium, and I think it's super cool. I'm super excited to see how it's going. I want to be very close from it, and whenever I come to New York again, I want to go visit you guys and have some whiskey.
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Love it. All right, I'm gonna try something new that I will fuck up at first, but this I think I can bring comments in, and so this guy you probably
Oh,
can't read it. How do you prove the sensor is attached to the asset? And while you answer that, I'll see if I can figure out this fucking graphic.
yeah, very fair. So basically, right now in the vaults, we're providing like temperature and humidity data. So we have that like sensor in the vault, and there's like live feed cameras going, so you can see everything that's happening in real time as well. With that data, we're working on like this proof of presence. We're trying out different sensors. It's very much in like a conceptual stage right now because we have like motion detectors for different assets. We're working on. We don't really want to provide like GPS tracking because you don't want other people to see exactly where like the Baxus hubs are for different vaults, but we're working on basically allowing people to see like the live feed video at the same time of the actual sensors like through that process if you're the original collector, so that you feel like secure in that way. And then we're hoping that like at every point that we can work with like some different sensor companies to make the actual like sensors trustless as well, and just like kind of do that through the whole system because nobody's really done this before. And so kind of creating like making this actually trustless is something that like is going to be, I'm excited, really really excited to do, but it's definitely going to take some time to like figure out and make it perfect.
Yeah, Joey, what do you got, dog? Good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, good to be here. I'm ripping my Heliotic shirt or my sweater today. So kind of working through the
Awesome.
swag. Um, yeah, I mean, I know you had a buy on earlier this week, so I'm sure he gave you like a ton of, all the cool updates. So I don't know what's really left for me, but I
Oh,
can
Abai just
happy
came
to
into
cover
the
some.
Gristle crew. That was just like totally private for the crew. So he has that one's not public, and I talked to him a little bit, but yeah.
So the good stuff is in there. Is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, I think Abai. Well, he said he's going to come on State of the Network soon, so maybe next
Cool.
week. Certainly not today.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
he's
just
gonna
think
have
because
to battle me
Joey,
for the spot.
it was you and Daniel who got kind of Carrie into Helium. Is that right, or it was just you? How did that whole thing work?
It was actually Scott and I,
Fucking
and we
Scott.
were working out of the Empire DAO co-working space in New York, and Todd walked by. So Todd is Carrie's co-founder. Um, Walked by Scott, and he's like, "Well, what are you guys up to? Like, we're having drinks upstairs if you guys want to come up." And I think that catches anybody's attention. And it's like, "Oh, we do like IoT stuff, and you could do like temperature tracking and all of that." And uh, I know, like, I think that's when Todd knew this was a conversation worth having. So Scott sent me upstairs to give the all details, and I showed off something I've showed off before, which is that temperature and humidity sensor that I've got posted up out in the forest. It's that Google sheet that just shows a bunch of data, and that was exactly what Carrie needed to see to sort of take everything from there.
Yeah, I kind of flipped out. I was so excited.
That is super
I've never
cool.
seen such a reaction to a spreadsheet. It was
Wow.
really fun.
Yeah, a little bit embarrassing, but that was kind of cool. Well, it just brought everything full circle, right? Because you could do it in such a remote location, which is exactly what we need. Because if you have like for example, if there's like a wine collector who's storing all their wine in some cave in France, like you can't get Wi-Fi down there. Like I'm not going to pay Spectrum like $7 million to go run a like wire down there. So that's why Helium's perfect for us.
Dig it. I've got the same question as Plain Simple. My Australian buddy. Is what like I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around like how do you, and this goes back to the original, like is there like something like a tag that you staple to a barrel and you take a picture of it and you're like this tag is kind of permanently affixed to this barrel or this cask?
Yeah,
Like
so
how do you
we
manage
have
that?
Yeah, so basically with bottles right now, like we have RFIDs on all of the different bottles in the vault. So and the whole thing is like recorded. So the whole point is that we're trying to like kind of at each step of the process allow people to see what's actually going on. And so we like affix an RFID to it, and then through that like is kind of the ID going forward for that actual asset, and then all of the sensor and all that data is like with that ID for that specific bottle. And so from like a user perspective, you're able to see like all of your bottles coming into the vault. You're able to see that process of like all of them being like cataloged and ID'd, them being scanned, them being authenticated, and then you're able to see like the actual sensors within the vault, pinging the data, and then from a dashboard you can just see the updated temperature and humidity and proof of presence.
Dig it. So the first step in that is that you attach whatever this thing is. Like, is there like I'm thinking of this just as a marketing thing. Like, is there like a video of
Yeah.
like, hey, this is me like tacking this thing onto your barrel? So there's like kind of camera proof of that, or that's not
Yeah,
feasible.
we're thinking that like the best way to actually allow people to see like the whole process, if you're a collector, like if you're just putting assets onto the platform, is through the live feed, because there's no really other way for us to like prove to you that these assets are coming into the vault when we say they are, right?
Yep.
So I
Yep.
think that that whole process needs to be like recorded in the best way possible. And
Yep.
then we're working with like all of our vaults are insured and all of that. And we're working with third party auditors as well to come in like every couple months. So it's tricky because it's like we're almost like an oracle in some sense, but we're trying to be like a more like trustless oracle through that whole process.
Okay.
If that
Super
makes
good
sense.
time. What
Yeah.
the fuck is an oracle? Because I keep hearing it
Like,
thrown around, and I look into it and I'll understand it for a second, but like help my little chicken brain understand an oracle.
well, the concept of an oracle is just a way to get off chain data on chain. Um, more than anything. And so for us, that's the goal, is to like provide this external factors affecting these bottles to the end user, and for them to see that process and see that data so that they can feel safe and comfortable that the underlying asset is actually okay, and hasn't been affected by the way that we're storing it, and that it hasn't lost any of its value. And so for the actual like intaking process, we'll live feed that, and then you're able to see like the sensors, and then from there it's like a dashboard with all the data that's being pulled.
Dig it. Neil,
Yeah.
Daniel, Joey, what do you got? I got like 1,000 things, but tell me what you're thinking from your kind of more like tech understanding side.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I would like. Sorry, go ahead.
it's such a cool thing because it's one of those scenarios where just having a bunch of raw data actually becomes really valuable. So,
Yeah.
you send somebody some asset that you're like, well, this is worth a lot of money. I want to make sure it's like securely stored, et cetera, et cetera. There's no reason why this same sort of thing shouldn't be in bank vaults and all sorts of other stuff, right? Like, you just
Yeah.
want a general understanding that the things that you have are being cared for properly. It's holding the host to their responsibilities. So if I send this whiskey bottle, I want to make sure it's not below freezing or, it 400 degrees because it got left in a big black box out in, or, a shipping container out in a parking lot or something, right?
Mhm.
Got it. Okay, so this goes, and you said this before, I didn't catch it right away, but there's Lee and I went down to a little neighborhood here a long time ago, and we were looking for an event space, and we are checking out this place that stores super nice cars. And so this
Yeah.
thing gets used for that because whatever, people are crazy about their 62 Mustang or whatever, like the best car ever is. And they're like, I want to know the temp and humidity and like tire condition and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's like brilliant about it is that you can do it for anything. Like you can do it for any asset that you have in a specific storage location. And the beauty about the LoRaWAN network and what I got so excited about is that there's so many sensors on the market right now that just track everything. Like we're looking at using water leak sensors, we're looking at like retrofitting soil moisture sensors. Like there's so much there's so much like that's already been built out in this space that we can just retrofit to this more like retail use case. And it's not just whiskey and wine. Like we're planning on like kind of taking this like vault tech that we're building and then putting that into any storage facility. Like the fact that you just trust somebody else with your stuff and have like no accurate live understanding of what actually is going on in the vault is kind of crazy to me. Like why should you trust them? So we're hoping to like really work to build that system and then have that able as like almost like a product on its own for a bunch of other types of assets.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask about, like what kind of other sensors were you guys thinking on using? But I guess different assets you're gonna need specific kinds of sensors, well, besides like temperature, moisture, humidity, etc.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So
Well,
cool.
and that's where like the whole hardware like component comes into it. And that's kind of like the fun part of like this whole new space is that, like it's so new and like understanding how all of these sensors work as well is something that like we're figuring out. So yeah, it's just such a cool space to be in. And there's so many different things to track as well, that you don't even think about. Like for example, with casks, which is what I spoke about at Breakpoint, I like we're trying to find out ways that we can just take in other information about what's going on with the maturation of the actual whiskey and like what actually like factors we can get from those casks.
Yeah, there's like something about, is it not turbidity, but like alcohol, water content, or like there's something in there where you're tracking not what's outside, but what's inside. That's super cool.
Yeah, exactly. So we're trying to like figure out ways to do that as well. Like there's just so many things to do.
Love it. Daniel, you got a fan on, Lucas Dutra. This guy's psyched on you. I think he's saying that you're handsome, but
it's a new employee from Hotspot. I think he's gonna get fired.
yeah, immediately. Let's see if we can. No, you can't fire him when he's saying you're handsome like that. Look at that guy. Oh, that's awesome. Neil, what are you thinking when you hear this? Because I'm getting kind of my mind blown on this trustless thing. I hadn't thought of the implications of that. But you're running this TrackPack thing, which is a different piece. Like, what are you thinking when you hear this other business? Like, how does it inspire you?
It's great. I mean, we just kind of viewed it from a different point of view. Like we're working with a partner that wants to enable this for decentralized delivery of items globally. So anyone could go to a decentralized marketplace and pay for a delivery and know that the item was picked up and know the item was delivered, and the contract could be released on delivery. So it's just crazy that there's so much to the space, and once you get into the hardware of this and you realize what you can do with it, it's just you kind of have to go, I'm going to do this one job. I'm going to build this one thing just for now, because otherwise you'll just end up building so many projects, and it's just great to have another person in the space doing this kind of thing,
Yeah. I should show you my desk because it's littered with fucking projects, none of which are finished.
Exactly.
Oh, I just have a drawer in the office of like 17 different sensors that I've just been testing out.
Yeah. I've got packages coming with many more sensors. I got overzealous, and then the headquarters let me know that I'd blasted past my tech budget for the month on the 1st. Lee came in. She's like, "Hey, what are you doing spending all this money?" I'm like, "Oh, it's for sensors. It's going to be the coolest thing." She's like, "Dude, slow down. Relax. We don't need 1,000 sensors right now." Let's see. We got Ed coming in. How long does it take to onboard a new one? Get it plugged in. Yeah, it should be pretty straightforward because it's Helium, but walk us through that. Carrie.
Oh, me? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, well, actually, like, 5 minutes. It's crazy quick. So, basically, you like turn the sensor on, and then you go onto the Helium console and insert the correct IDs, and then it starts like pinging data. And then all we've done is just add through the Helium console, different like HTTP endpoints and sort of ways to transform the data from like the hex code into actually like 2 integers. So like taking the packet that's sent from the actual device and then making that human readable, and that's it. So, and usually that code for taking it from that like byte code basically to human readable is like found in the instructions of the actual underlying sensor. So it's not too difficult of a process. Actually, it's very embarrassing. The first time, like after I met with Joey, and the first time I like got a sensor and tried to set it up, I like couldn't figure out the 3 different IDs and where all those were, like the app ID, the DEY ID, whatever. And I was like sitting there for like an hour, and I was like, why is this not working? I'm like, oh, I just like literally put that in wrong. Okay. Then, it's like the first time you learn Java and you like can't, get the 2 brackets to hook up, and you're just like trying to get it working and it's not working.
Laugh, Joey. I have never, you know the answer to that one.
No, I'm laughing because that is not as relatable as Carrie thinks it is. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think
what's Java again?
Yeah, it's the joke that the E in IoT is for easy, and that's what you found. So I guess one of the cool things then is that you guys are using the same, let's say like 6 or 10 or whatever it is sensors, but a limited number of sensors. And so you can make them in the same way that Neil does, where the track pack thing is super easy. You just scan it and go. You're not like reinventing the wheel every time.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Like for all of our vault locations, it's like the exact same setup. And depending upon like the square footage of the area, like you want different sensors on different areas. But hey GT, he was our first engineer. He's the most lovely man
He
in the
wants
world.
to stay employed. I like that. Always say nice things in public. Hey, shit, yeah. Let's see. Okay, Ed's got a good one here. This any concern on uptime? And this is the same kind of thing for you, Neil, right? Is that like the network's got to be super stable for this to work, and this whole idea of like SLAs almost goes out the window with the decentralized trustless thing. Carrie, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Neil.
Oh, sorry. A little bit of lag. I apologize. Yeah, uptime is a little bit like definitely concerning. We really need, like, the thing is that collectors just aren't used to getting this data to begin with. So even if it pings once a day, like that's actually okay. You don't need a constant like second by second by second data feed. And what we're providing them is like very new and exciting to them and is different than anything they've had before. So we're very much like in beta stage with all of this, and just actually having that, that data to begin with is quite good. So definitely like a concern about uptime, but as we kind of show this solution on the Helium network and more people see like what they're capable of building and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, that's just better for everybody.
Love it. And that's Neil. Yeah, what's your kind of view on this thing, on this uptime piece?
I think it's the uptime piece is just a change of we've got to change minds on it, because we don't need SLAs. We've got redundancy, and I think that's a big part of what we're trying to show recently with the timeline viewer and things on TrackPack, is that when you go to like the central of Lisbon, there's 40 hotspots that pick you up, or if you go out into the sticks, there's still hotspots in number that are picking you up, so we don't need that SLA.
Yeah. I was at a meetup last night and gave a little like 1-minute lightning talk, and this was like inside brick walls and everything. It was an old bank, and it was still hitting like 10 gateways, 8 to 10 gateways for each whole packet that went through.
Dig it. And it goes back to me to thinking about what Helium is and what it's good for and what it's strong at, right? And this is, when I first found it, I was looking to track paragliders, and it's like, oh, this is a super critical application. We got to be able to see them every 10 seconds or whatever it was. It's like, in some senses, it's really good for that, because you want to be able to go long distances with long battery life. But in some senses, like, oh no, if you want something every 2 seconds that's hyper accurate and never goes down, maybe the network right now isn't for you. But if you're looking for something like Carrie or Neil, where redundancy kind of overcomes that, or if you only need it once a day, like who cares? You don't need it every microsecond. So you're selling into what the strengths of the networks are, not what they aren't.
Yeah, exactly. And just how far the network actually spreads for LoRaWAN, and the amount of like sensors we're able to hook up, having such sparse miners is like, it's just incredible, honestly. Like I remember like reading like that first page and then thinking about like these rick houses in Kentucky that are just in super remote rural areas, and I was like, wait, this is like the perfect solution, like this is the only way to do it. Yeah.
I can see Sam's on here.
Yeah.
He's psyched about this thing underground. And let's see, Miroslav Mako at Heliotics. I think, who's got that shirt? Yeah, that's right, Joey. He had talked about this as well. He's like rolling out all of these sensors across Europe. And I tend to think it's all line of sight stuff because that's what made the most POC kind of early on. But that's not really what LoRaWAN is. Like, it'll just blast right through walls or underground or whatever.
Yeah, like I mean, it's working in New Jersey right now. We have this vault that's like really underground behind like 5 separate doors with like concrete walls, and it's working great. And and so it's just it's kind of exciting. Like I think we're really like pushing the boundaries and like finding new ways to actually use this, and it's it's living up to the test. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, it's batshit crazy. And I think like going back to the trustless piece, there's something in there that like I heard and I was like, oh, this is allowing almost like a whole, not a new vertical, but a new like horizontal, like a new industry of this trustless stuff where everyone's providing the coverage. You don't need to, worry about one person doing it. It's really interesting to think through the implications of that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like basically the goal is to make it so that you like at every point of this process, we're mitigating fraud on every single level, right? Like we're just kind of like basically like taking away any potential to like get in and like change numbers or like for the device specifically, like looking at the specific LoRaWAN device, if it gets like if the case gets broken and you like are able to go into it, like there should be a way that a message can be sent to the end user being like, hey, this has been tampered with, like how do we do that? So there's so many things to build here, and what we have right now is like a great system that works, but we want to make it just like bulletproof. And that's what the Baxus team is working on.
Love it. The whole thing is so cool because I think it starts with like these casks and barrels, but thinking about like if I can just think about cars in 2 seconds and I don't know much about the world, like anyone who's thinking about this, because it's like the storage solution, like the storage piece is what you're aiming at.
Yeah. Well, because that's sort of like that's the infrastructure, right? Because that's sort of what takes us. That's what separates us from a lot of other like alternative asset marketplaces. Is that obviously given like the infrastructure that we've created with the NFTs representing the assets, you can totally make a marketplace, and that's what we're doing. So you can trade back and forth, but you can do collateralized loans, like you can do a bunch of different financial stuff. But the whole goal is that NFT outside of the Baxus platform is still representative of the underlying asset. Like that actual contract representing that asset can be used and is everybody in the system understands and believes that contract represents that asset. And it just doesn't need to stay just on Baxus. And so that's the goal of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to get to. And so having a trustless system is the only way to do that. And then once you've been able to create that, you can, like, it's like, why would anybody store anything where they weren't able to make sure that it was 100% safe, right? Like, why would you ever get into that? So, it's a very lofty goal, and there are a lot of things to build to get there. But finding out and like starting to use Helium has been just an awesome starting point, and we'll see where we get to.
Right on. Neil, I see you like shaking your head, like you're going like, what's going on in that brain of yours?
It's just. We've always sort of told it that the Helium network links the real life to the blockchain, and it's just so great hearing people are deploying that and going to show the world what it can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're doing the Helium kind of mappers Here Be Dragons brainstorming session tomorrow. I think we're going to get to talk more about that. I'm curious about, or we'll talk more about that then. Curious about the NFT thing. Like in my brain, I'm trying to tie NFTs, like, this will sound stupid. Are the sensors like sending a stream directly to some NFT somewhere? Is that like a locked in thing, or is there like, how does that work?
Yeah. So it's so funny because when we started off, like the first time like Todd and I were like started this whole thing, it was like the height of like NFT summer. And we were pitching everybody and we were like, oh, like, like asset backed NFTs, this is the new thing. And all these potential investors were like, wait, real assets? Why real goods? Like just do NFTs. Like There's no need. And now we're in the space where we have, we have real things, and they're like, why are you using NFTs? Like that, it's a scam. Don't do that. And so I think like the thing that I'm most proud about, I would say, as a company, is that the actual NFT, like, you can't do what we're doing without it. Like you need the NFT, because the actual technology of the NFT allows users to be able to like prove authenticity and track ownership of the actual bottle, right? And that's what an NFT is for. so it's exciting to not just like, slap an NFT on a bottle as like a new marketing experience, but for it to actually be like a technology that is needed for us to do what we're doing. In terms of your question about getting the actual like sensor data into the contract of the NFT, so this has seriously kept me up so many nights, like thinking about how we're actually going to like intertwine these two concepts. Because, and when we get back to the point of like an oracle, that's sort of where you get into that space, because there should be a way for us, like, and there is a way for us to basically have like a live stream feed of data. And then that is kind of like, that's constantly updating. And then that sort of changes, either like the cover photo of the NFT, or is able to, freeze the NFT, like the freeze authority of the NFT, so that it has to stay in the same place if the underlying, if the temperature goes up to like, say, like it gets like super freezing in the vault. And then that signals to the NFT like, oh, hey, something's kind of up here. Something's a little bit off. I'm going to freeze this so that nobody can trade it until Baxus can go check and like suss out the situation and see like the validity of what's going on. So right now we're just working on solutions for that, because there's sort of like, there's like 3 different layers to make this trustless. Like there's the bottom layer, which is really at the hardware level. Right. And then there's sort of like sending over the network and having it so that we know that the data that was sent from the device and the data that we're putting on chain is the same. And then there's the level of, okay, how does the actual end NFT, like the data coming from the sensor, how do we relate that to the actual NFT, so that that NFT is able to either like not be able to be traded, or the user is able through the contract to see updated information. So right now on the like Baxus site, you're able to see like the data, like just in charts and stuff for the actual NFT you have, but it's not actually like a part of the contract right now. But that's where we're getting to. So that's sort of the three things that we're working on.
Dig it. Yeah, no, there's all kinds of complexities. We start to use all this stuff and figure it out. And I'm expecting there to be, the usual challenges and hurdles when you try to use something new.
Oh yeah, and especially like when you use the word trustless with any system, like that's a really, really huge big word, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the goal of what we're trying to get to. And I think right now, like what we're doing, I think, is sort of the best in the space of what there is right now, and we're really trying to get to that next point, because once you get there, then, there's so many other things, and it's just going to revolutionize so many different things.
Love it. Let's see, you're getting all kinds
I have
of
a question.
Go ahead, shoot.
Is this system that you guys are building some sort of like partially open source part? Like, imagine I have a specific use case that I want to use your system. I want to like pay for using Baxus backend or something like that. But then I have my own kind of service sensor that I want to integrate with something else. Something like maybe I want my chicken coop to have some sort of like Baxus NFT Web3.
100%. I mean, that's the goal, is to make this all open source, like to make all of this infrastructure tech open source, so that, anybody can use this and also have this as a part of their life. It's tricky. Like the tricky part is that if you make the software open source, like you still need, as a person, to like get the hardware device, sync it up. Like it's not like an NFT marketplace that you can just like fork and you're like, all right, like it's done, it's made. There's so many different layers to it. But that's definitely the goal, is that like to allow like a community basically to be built on top of this tech, and then, see where it goes. And that's the whole spirit of like, Web3 in the beginning, which is why I fell in love with it like months ago. So
that's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Definitely here. All right, Travis is asking about the seed banks. I think it's just cool to see like, okay, there's a million businesses you could do.
Oh yeah, like there's so many different things. I like. Sorry if I'm being an idiot right now. What is a seed bank?
So it'll be a place where you're keeping all of these different seeds. So people like are doing heirloom seeds for tomatoes or for plants or growing them in their
Oh, like
yard, or
literally
definitely the pot
seeds.
people. Yeah, they're
Oh,
like, hey, I
cool.
want this one
Okay.
strain.
Oh yeah. I mean, like definitely. Like there's no like we could totally do that as well. We're like my co-founder is like his mind about whiskey and wine and that whole space is just absolutely brilliant. And so we have a lot of people who are in that space and it's just like begging for revolution. But beyond that, you can do anything. Like this is completely does not matter on the underlying asset at all.
Love it. And then whenever there's money involved, there's always some asshole that comes along and fucks it up for everybody.
Totally.
How are you guys kind of fighting the gaming spoofing stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So that's the thing is that right now all of the vaults like we own and operate all of the vaults. So we're basically trying to create that as like perfectly as we can before we actually allow that tech to be opened up to other storage facilities. Um, and so there's like definitely I mean it's funny because the actual like the data that's being transferred over the network has a that there's a difficult it's difficult to like spoof that because you'd have to like hack into the system and do that. I think the fraud would come with the actual like setting up of the assets within the vault in the beginning. And so that's that piece of the puzzle that we need to get like super solid on before we're able to have other like vault owners or kind of deliver this to their storage facilities.
Yeah, no, money's awesome, but it attracts
Mhm.
a few bad people, and they make a lot of work for the rest of people who are trying to do good. We've seen that. I mean, certainly seen that on Helium and every human network I've ever been a part of.
Definitely.
Only takes a couple bad seeds. Let's see. Sierra's asking. Sierra's been doing a bunch of brainstorming on various names for these IoT networks in the comments. But she's asking about this NFT thing.
Oh yeah, okay. Staking is such an interesting concept here, and that's something we definitely want to get to. Right now, like I mean, honestly, we're only a couple months old, so we've just sort of just started on this. But the ability to actually like stake, like your physical asset, that's definitely in the pipeline. But we want to do like collateralized loans. We're even like the concept of like insurance on an asset level instead of on an individual level is something that I've been kind of throwing around in my head that we could do given all of this data. So there's a lot of different stuff.
Yeah. Neil, are you guys doing anything with insurance and trackback? Because you said something about this like tracking packages. That's certainly edging closer to better
Mm.
decentralized delivery.
That could totally fit in there as well. I feel like that's actually a very similar problem that they're dealing with that we're dealing with.
Hmm. There's so much to it. It just needs exploring and just working out what the solutions are to it. But it's just so great to be in the landscape that we could do that, right? But it's almost like the NFTs need a stage where it's verified that the asset is what it is and where it is, and some sort of verifier to ingest that data onto the blockchain and regularly do that to make sure it's in the same state as what's being reported. But it's
Yeah,
so cool that
exactly.
that's a problem to solve, right?
Yeah, it's such an interesting problem. It's like we need like a Web3 Deloitte that's real time, that
Mm.
we can actually trust. Um, yeah, so that's the main like crux of the issue, and I think when you're able to solve that, like yeah, you can do it for anything. It's like a zero knowledge proof of an actual physical thing. It's kind of another
Yeah,
way I've
that's
thought about
so cool. It's just
it. Yeah.
just just one of those things that just leave you thinking all night about it, and into the next couple of months, like how do I?
I know, it's like my sleep schedule has been totally thrown off by all of this.
By
Like,
Helium,
really,
by your company.
once I learned yeah, once I learned about because I never as I said, I never knew anything about hardware, and then once I started getting into all the different LoRaWAN sensors and then trying to figure out how all of those work, and then figuring out how we can, like, retrofit them to do what we need to do, that was, like, 3 weeks of me just, like, not sleeping. It was, like, way too exciting.
Yeah.
I think we all been there. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're all years deep into that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's constantly mind blowing. I don't know if you can barely see the whiteboard behind me because it's all fuzzed out, but it's just like I've gotten to this thing where I'll be falling asleep. And I think I've talked about this before. And I've got all these little yellow magnets on the whiteboard because I'll be moving them around all my different ideas. And I'll have an idea and I'll get up and just like stark naked, walk out of the bedroom. And, like the whole house is dark. I grab my little pen, write on the whiteboard. Lee's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, climbing up on the couch. It's like if there's video of it, it'd probably be viral and Yeah, fairly racy. But yeah, just like this constant like idea flow coming in.
Well, there's so many things to build, right? Like we're so early in this space. There's just so many things to do that yeah, it's hard to get any sleep at all.
Yeah, and then we got plain simple tech, Australian fella here asking kind of this is the thing that I think a lot of us think about what we're talking about is like what does the future look like when this stuff is mandatory? Like when everybody has to have Neil's track pack thing on their package. You know, what does it look like when Amazon is like, of course you have real time tracking on your package all the time. Like how would you not have that? Which is not where we are now. Same kind of thing for your industry.
I mean, like I think it's just a complete overhaul of how people interact with like all of these systems. It's I would say it's very similar to like Brave being a privacy browser and people having like insight into what's actually going on. It's like the curtain's going to be like blown back and you're going to see what actually happens. Um,
Mm.
and I think it'll provide people a lot more I don't know. I think it's like you need to do education like within little bits along the whole process for people to actually like have an understanding. Because I think right now people just trust these like big companies. They trust all these systems. You know, they'll speak with somebody at customer service and hopefully something will be figured out. But they don't actually have like an insight into what's going on. And so I think having that insight will really just provide a lot more transparency and hopefully people will feel better about it. Honestly, it's such a huge question. It's like how do you even like when you revolutionize all of this, it's like so many things are going to change, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever been to like a big package sorting facility. It's not a normal thing. Maybe Carrie, you've seen it just with wine and whiskey, but a while ago, FedEx flew Lee and I out to their Memphis hub, which is I think they're like the I'll get this wrong, but it's like the third largest airline in the world is FedEx's airline, and they have like some insane amount of flights every day because they're delivering all these packages everywhere. And we tend to think like, oh yeah, I box up my stuff, I put it in a box, I take it to FedEx, they put a label on it, and then it arrives magically somewhere else, like white glove carried the whole way. And that's 100% not how it goes. Like they're just, and they're not, they're not trying to break your stuff, but the speed at which stuff has to move in order to get it from one place to another, like necessitates a little bit of non-white glove handling. And I think that's this really cool thing that we'll start to see where it'll clean up some of the bad sides of that and also make some of the good sides really, really cool. So you can see exactly where a package is or what happened to it. And maybe one day we get to a point where it's automated that the package gets to you and it's broken and FedEx is already processing the claim, or like
Yeah.
a whiskey bottle is broken or whatever, the insurance is already processing the claim and you don't have to worry about fighting them and proving like, no, I took a picture, here's whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I forget who I was talking to, but there was this super cool use case of basically like somebody like when you buy a cup of coffee, you're able to see, where the beans were made. You're able to see where they were shipped, like who grew them,
Yeah.
who grinded them, like the milk. You're able to see like every single part of that, and then you're able to tip specific people along the line of
Oh,
like who
cool.
created that It's like so cool. I'm blanking on who told me this. It might have been our chief of staff,
Was it
but
Daniel? I know Daniel's into coffee. He's got a sell of a coffee shop.
maybe
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't.
I mean, there's this whole thing. Yeah, sorry, with like since I started playing with coffee, the blockchain and coffee is something that people have been talking for a long time. So every step of the coffee where it goes. But yeah, this thing, the idea to be able to tip people on the way because we have the track record to know the NFT wallet, sorry, the crypto wallet from the farmer, for example.
Mhm.
That
Yeah, and,
was
like, that's
super
just such a
cool.
cool concept, so you can see, like, who actually did this, who created this, and then you're able to, like, help them out. Like, how brilliant is that, you know? It's not just,
Yeah,
like,
Starbucks would
the end
probably
big
fake
guy, it's, like,
everything.
helping the little guys in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. Starbucks will be the part of the
Yeah,
problem and part of the solution because if they do it, like everyone else is gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's see.
I love that. Yeah.
Dave at Helium Analytics managed to drop a picture that I'm not sure that he wanted shared, but he's not here because he looks like this right now.
Oh, that is so incredible.
Yeah. He had to go to a holiday party and he's like, hey, this is my reason that I'm not on the show. So it took me a while, Daniel, but I figured out how to do it, how to bring him in. So nobody dressed like that.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Nice.
He definitely does.
Um, Cool. Well, I think that's like that covers the Baxus stuff. Neil or Daniel, is there anything like as far as like a general overarching concept? Anything that you guys? I saw both of you like nodding and smiling as we went along. Like, what are you thinking on it? What is next for you? Was it inspiring for you?
I mean, for me or for Carrie?
For you, Daniel. Yeah, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm super excited. I just want to be very close from the project and kind of follow what's happening and see if there's other ever ways to collaborate and even just go
Mhm.
visit the locations and everything. Maybe you can let us know what's the website where can we reach you guys and follow the project.
Yeah, it's Baxus.co, Baxus.co. And yeah, we're getting a lot of like good stuff out. But I think like at the end of the day, the cool thing about Helium is that like the you can do this for anything, and it's not like you don't have to like just specifically be like a blockchain project or company to do this, right? Like if you have any sort of like company that so if
Just in
you have
case you
any
didn't hear
company that
that.
yeah, that's dealing with like physical assets and you want to give like updated information about like uh, external factors affecting them. Like, this is like the perfect use case for that.
Yeah. And also, I think now is the best time to build stuff. Yes, last year was
Oh
way too hectic, but there was too much noise happening. Now there's a
yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit more clarity where people are like, okay, let's focus on what matters the most, and let's make like a sustainable business out of it.
Oh, exactly. Well,
So I
honestly,
think
I've
it's
been
perfect that you started like 2 months ago.
yeah. Well, it's kind of ideal because we're getting a lot of interest because it's like, "Oh, you guys are like providing real utility." Like, "Oh, you're like a real use case." Like, "Wow." Like this is, like this is really like a sustainable business model. Like, "Oh, you're not like a crypto company." It's like blockchain is the only way to achieve the solution for this massive problem. Like, wow, right? And so it's exciting to be in that space right now. And really like striving towards that solution.
It is crazy. We were talking a little bit before we started
That's
the
beautiful.
stream about how you like when you came into Helium was just a couple months ago. So you missed like the insane buildup and all the people, screaming to get
Totally.
in for a reasonable reason. Like you could spend $400 on a hotspot and make 16 to 20,000 a month on a great placement. Like, yeah, I don't know
I
anyone
know.
who's going to say no to that, and I don't know anyone who thinks that's a bad idea. But that
Yeah,
was
you could have
also
bootstrapped.
always going to be short lived. And you kind of came into it like, oh, there's a usable network and no one's using it because they aren't getting what they were getting. Like, oh, I'm coming in
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, like we really started using it like 2 months ago. Like I met Joey 2 months ago, So I like totally missed out on everything before that. And I think like what's left is like, okay, like a real use case, real utility, right? Like at Baxis we're trying to use like infrastructure and projects and protocols and then provide like real use cases so that, normal people who aren't, crypto maxis and haven't really been exposed to blockchain before are able to use the technology without actually having to understand like the underlying like consensus mechanisms. Like I said this before, it's like if when the internet started, everybody who was a part of the internet had to understand what TCP/IP protocol was. Like nobody would be using it, right? And so yeah, so I think that's like probably a pretty good thing that we got in a little bit later. And just like kind of stuck with like the pure like utility use case aspect of it.
Yeah, it's super cool because Neil and Daniel have been here since the beginning, kind of ridden that wave, and I think they both built businesses inside Helium that are now kind of expanding out of Helium. And it's
Hmm.
I think we've heard plenty from the Helium Foundation and from Helium before it was Nova, and from Nova about use cases, but this might be one of the first ones where I'm like, oh my god, this is like a real big business that is coming in from the outside.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm excited about it. There's so many things to do. That's at the end of the day, it's like how many pivot points do we have? Like so many.
1,000, yeah. And then
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of people asking if they can come visit the facilities. It seems to me like the answer would be a hard no, but then I'm like, well, maybe you charge for like as stupid as it sounds to me, hey, you can go look at a $30,000 bottle of whiskey if you want. It's going to cost you $5.
Yeah, well, honestly, like, it's truly not a bad idea. Like, well, we were thinking about having something set up in Empire DAO in New York. But there's also this cool like hologram company that you could see some of like the photos that we take are really high res, so you're able to actually like see them in like 3D, and it looks pretty cool. Like, it's very techy, and that's also like a cool experience as well. So yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing, is that like I go into the vault sometimes and I look around and I'm like, this stuff is like insane. Like some of these bottles are just like so expensive. Like, whoa, I don't want to unload or unpack or touch any of these things. Like,
Yeah.
keep me far away.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. You go in to see the Mona Lisa, and it's this tiny little thing, and there's probably 600 people in the room at any given time, all fucking pointing their phones at it and taking pictures and forgetting that they're seeing it in real life. But, like, yeah, people will pay to see art, whether it's whiskey or a painting of a lady.
Yeah, exactly.
So, super cool. All right, well, I think that kind of wraps up the Baxus stuff. Although, if you have more questions, let's ask them. Let's talk a little bit about in the last 10 minutes of the show what's going on with Helium, because we just had this giant, what is it, the protocol update paper released. Neil, when you were reading through that, what was jumping out to you? I know Dave at Analytics had some comments, but I'll start with you.
I think the main one that I saw that sticks in my head was the growth of companies deploying more than 1,000 sensors on the network. I thought that was insane. I didn't realize that before. It was like 14% of people are putting over 1,000 sensors on the IoT network a month.
Jeez.
So it's just crazy to see that, and that was a big thing that stuck out to me. It was great to see that the IoT side of things is growing, and that tracking seems to be the major use case people think is going to happen with the network. But then again, there was also smart ag and everything else, and it was just great to see the report really reflect the data of that IoT is growing. It's not going away. It's building, and we're just getting to the fun times of what's going to happen on the network, and you can start to see signs of that lag from the network being created to it actually being used is starting to come to an end. We're starting to see people use it in big scale ways, which is great.
Yeah, it's a super exciting time to be around. Daniel, have you had a chance to read through it? And I've skimmed through it a couple times, and I'm like trying to dig in still.
Yeah, no, I just skimmed it. I haven't really spent time on that. We just got back from our 1 month basically trip on California.
That's right. I got to spend some time with you. You came over with Lee and I. We had some meals together, hiked up a hill.
Yeah, so out of shape, I almost died, but it was fun. Beautiful view from San Diego. But yeah, I didn't have time to check yet. I'm just catching up with everything happened while we were away. But yeah, I'm super excited about the growth of the usage, right? Because it's kind of fun to see that something that we've been talking for so long. It's like, okay, like hardware takes time to build, as Carrie is getting to that now. It's not something that you can quickly deploy with like a press of a button. So it's just something that's going to happen, and it's really exciting to see that happening. There's still a lot to be deployed.
Yeah. No, it's crazy how much is out there. Carrie, can you give me an idea of how many sensors you think you'll be onboarding in the next month, 6 months, year, like however you think of it? Or is there like a number of sensors per cask or per barrel or per whatever?
Well, I mean, maybe 5,000, maybe more. Like, because if you
give or take 10,000, it's 5,000.
Give or take 10,000. But yeah, like looking at like motion detectors, temperature sensors. Like we have in the vault right now, we have like 1,600 bottles. And then getting into cask world, and just going down to Kentucky and kind of setting all this stuff up. Like it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit.
Yeah. And I guess, we're going to see a future whenever it happens where there's a sensor kind of on and in every bottle. And do you see something happening where the manufacturers will start putting sensors in the bottles as well?
Yeah. So that's a super, super interesting area to get into. And I think a lot of people have really tried to do that. And there's a bunch of different ways to do it dependent upon different bottles. A lot of different companies, even luxury, like Louis Vuitton or Tiffany, they're coming out with sort of those, those cards of authenticity, that being related to an NFT on chain or something like that. But they haven't gotten into the actual tracking sensor side of it yet. They're just sort of getting into like the NFT side of it. So I think when they're able to make that like connection and have that like that LoRaWAN sensor in some way, like a part of the bottle or part of the asset, that's kind of when you're at like the perfect part of it. But that's
Yeah.
definitely in the future, no question.
What do you got,
It's
Neil?
so cool. I've just been thinking about it in my head, and I was just thinking, you could probably use AI to recognize the bottle and know that it's in the facility and things like that.
Oh yeah. I mean the
If you
like the
train the model
opening
well enough.
stuff that's been coming out now, like I haven't even like I like just looking at like how brilliant and like smart that stuff is. I'm just like, okay, there's definitely something that we can do with that about this.
100%.
It's amazing just to think. You start thinking like, oh, this one business, like what can it do? And just storage monitoring as a like you guys are, I don't know, maybe creating some kind of industry where it's got to be out there right now, but it's really like, what do they call it? Fractal, fractionated. There's some fucking fancy word for it where it's like they're all split. Like every asshole has their own kind of set, but this will put it all in one
Yeah.
network.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the goal, right? Is that like there's a lot of different people like targeting this problem, but kind of in silos, and
Yeah, yeah,
nobody's trying to make it so that you have it in one place and then it can be represented everywhere. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve.
yeah. And once you solve it, then you've got a massive competitive advantage because why would anyone store their stuff in like a hidden room where they don't know what's going on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You guys will crush. Cool, super cool to see. What else is going on, Neil? We got our Here Be Dragons brainstorm session tomorrow. Fractionalized. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about that. Do you want to kind of tease that a little bit so folks know what to expect?
Yeah, so the idea is that after running the test event in London and having people go out for the day with mappers and visit locations and give them points based on what they were doing, we think it'd be a fun app to do, have different game modes and things. And we're just going to have a discovery session, right? Talk about some of those ideas and what we could build on this thing. But just having like events in the wild that I could set up a London event, set some locations and people visit those and get NFTs to visit to them, like visit Big Ben, get an NFT or things like that. It just sounds so much fun. And I think there's a lot of commercialization to it as well, that, you could go to an event for the day and do a certain task in a certain order and have fun doing it and get rewarded for doing that. And that's what we want to talk about, right?
Yeah. I was like, all right, how are we going to charge for it? How are we going to do this? And you're like, dude, let's get something working first.
Yeah. Like at the London event, the idea is get what we don't like MVP, we like MLP, minimum lovable product. So get the first version out where there's a game and that you have a reason to come back to the app, and once we got that, then we can work out the rest later. Because once you've got the users hooked, then it's easy to make a funnel out of that. So the idea is make a fun game and then people will come.
I'm so going to use that MLP. That's so much better.
Yeah. Was that you or Rob that came up with that, Neil? Or is that just between
Rob was the one that told me that, that don't aim for MVP because if you don't have a feature that pulls them back, it's pointless.
Right.
They'll like it for 5 minutes and then it will lose interest.
Yeah. Huh. I mean, it's like this starts to get mind blowing because you take something like Here Be Dragons, the mapping thing, and there goes the dog. There must be someone outside within 300 meters of the property, and the sidewalk's like 10 meters away. And you're like, hey, I want you to map out. I mean, it starts to get super interesting. You're like, I want you to go to this place, and you get access to whatever this cask storage thing, and confirm, with NFC or with whatever else, or with LoRaWAN, that this bottle is there, and you make that part of like a fun game.
Oh yeah, I mean, like the marketing potential for this and like the gamification is huge. And that's the thing that I've been saying. There's so many ways to go about this, and there's so many different marketing ways, and just like to get more people involved. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's such a cool concept too, right? Because like you would want to know when you visited it, or even like keeping it for your kids, and then like providing almost like a time capsule or something where you can see like the provenance of this and like every year, like there's so many cool things you can do with it.
Yeah, no, it's nonstop. Or some of the stuff we'll do a little bit more. We talked about like having different NFTs for different courses in different cities, and then stacking NFTs. So like as you travel around, you're like, oh, I got the London one, I got the Berlin one, I got the Shenzhen one.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
and then making it like a collection, and then only showing like your progress bar, and then you want to make it all the way,
Oh
and
my
yeah, all
God,
that.
yeah.
It's like, no,
That's
That's super exciting.
Someone will have to put one on the top of Mount Everest and put a bounty on it or something, It's things like that. It'd be crazy to see how far this could go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's super interesting stuff. I did not do a great job of articulating it the other day on the Gristle crew call, but the GeoNet is coming in with this way to make it so that the GPS streams that you're getting, they're not spoofable. And so I think that's kind of one of the really important steps is making sure that the information we're seeing is actually true. And they're gonna with the tracking side of that and the location side of that's what they're gonna do, and it's bananas to see that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's such a cool use case.
Cool. Well, we're at an hour. Carrie, thanks a ton for coming on. Neil, always good to see you. Daniel and Joey, thank you guys for coming on as well. And super psyched to see you tomorrow, Neil, for Here Be Dragons brainstorming. And Carrie, I'm pumped to I better buy a bottle of whiskey or something and send it to you just so I see how the whole thing works. So.
We're working on it. We're getting it out. We're getting all this working. I'll be coding for the next couple years.
Love it. All right, guys. Thanks a ton for coming on. We'll see you next time. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.